Is it the culmination of our Police Accountability Series in partnership with the Community Police Commission? We are about to get started with our town hall, but first, we're going to have Mario explain to you a little bit about who the CPC is and also do a land acknowledgement. We'll get started with Mario.
If there's any words that we may share from this here stage out to the broadcast, we seek refuge under the traditions of the Duwamish and Coast Salish peoples, whose lands we have dried our feet upon. And if there are any words that we may share from this stage to abroad, we seek that may go astray, we seek refuge under the dove, the universal symbol of peace. We greet you all today in the spirit of peace and in love, and welcome you all to our town hall for the Community Police Commission. We would like to take this moment to acknowledge our partners in helping us create today. Thank you to Rainier Avenue Radio, as well as our partners, Urban League, the Seattle Metropolitan. I would also like to acknowledge our co-chair who's present here, as well as our commissioners from the Community Police Commission and our executive director. Thank you also especially to our partners that are here as well, Office of Police Accountability, as well as the Office of Inspector General, and members of SPD. But the most ones that we are most grateful for, and thank you for taking your time out to be here with us, is our community members. Thank you so much, because this here talk is very important. But before I'd like to get started, I would like to take you on the story of how this commission came to be. As you know, across the nation, many years, for a while, policing in our communities, especially communities of Black, brown, indigenous people of color, they were most harmed by policing in the nation. And it wasn't until 2010, an indigenous woodcarver here, Duwamish, in Seattle, was tragically shot and killed by SPD. His name was John T. Williams. It was from this that community had come together, and they took this to the Department of Justice, in which a consent decree was created in 2012. It was mandated. And the ordinance in 2013 created the Community Police Commission. In 2017, this commission was made permanent. And in 2025, although the consent decree has come to an end, the work of the Community Police Commission continues, along with its partners as the accountability system for SPD. As you can see, look, this is the accountability system, the Office of Police Accountability, the Office of Inspector General, SPD as well, but the most important is you, the Community Police Commission. The voices of the community is the most important piece of the accountability system. This commission, when it's full staffed, we have 3 co-chairs and a total of 15 commissioners altogether. And their work, these are the ones that guide our canoe. They give us the work, they guide us in what we should be doing. Part of their work is actually participating in committees and work groups which divvy up the work for the Community Police Commission. Under them, the hands and the feet of the Community Police Commission is its staff. And we have 3 teams: our operations team, headed by our executive director, E.C. Ahmed, as well as the policy team and the community engagement team. The way that this works is a community engagement team, Merkitu's out there, shout out to Merkitu, and also Masuma. For our team, we go out to community, we build relationships, and we invite community members to come to events like this and have us come to their events as well, where we listen to community and gather their feedback. That feedback then is passed on to our policy team, to Taryn and to Danny. They work diligently to actually make amendments and draft policies and do research, and they bring that information into our local governments and to SPD. Finally, the final product is put out by our communications team. Shout out to Kieran and to Davina. They put this message out, and again, as new issues rise in community and we're aware of it, this whole cycle is in continuation. Some of the biggest things that we've done this year in gathering community input was listening to the feedback that community members had about certain policies and certain legislation that took place in City Council. And we were able to create amendments as well as partner with community organizations to draft a letter for legislation. But as we continue out throughout the rest of this year and the rest of the work, as an accountability partner, we hope to continue to engage community and hear feedback. Should you have any information or any needs or concerns, feel free to hit us up. Follow us on our Facebook, our Instagram, LinkedIn, all of this. And also, please take our survey. Our survey helps inform our work and how we can best serve our communities. With that, I welcome you and I turn it over to Tony B. And thank you so much for your time and community for being here as well.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you all for being here. Good evening and welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio's Police Accountability Series Town Hall. This is presented by the Community Police Commission. We have done 4 of these. It is part of for us, 31 days of this thing that we call the Community Election Connection, where we are looking to make sure that our community is informed, aware, and engaged, and ready to present their vote for the candidate that they will hold accountable that most aligns with their concerns. Police accountability is a big deal. Over the past several weeks, we've been taking a deep, unfiltered look at policing in our city and county. It has certainly been part of the conversation that has went on to the candidates who are running for office. We've explored where we've been, where we are, where we need to go to achieve true accountability and justice. We've talked about policies, power, reform, and community trust. And tonight, we continue that journey, bringing voices together from the streets to City Hall, from the precinct to the people. Accountability isn't an attack on law enforcement. It's an affirmation that safety and justice must go hand in hand. It's about transparency. It's about fairness. It's about community. And no matter their background or zip code, everyone can feel protected and respected. This town hall is part of an ongoing conversation that doesn't end when the cameras go off, when the microphones go silent. It continues in our neighborhoods, our schools, our homes, and in, of course, the halls of power. So thank you for being here, whether you wear a badge, live in the community, or advocate for change. Your voice matters. This is about listening, learning, and leading together. Once again, I'm Tony B. You're tuned into Rainier Avenue Radio, your community radio station, your platform, your voice. This started with what seemed to be an innocent conversation with the executive director of the Community Police Commission. And I'm going to tell you that from there, it turned into not only what you have here, but it doesn't stop here, that will continue. So I would like to introduce the executive director. And again, I know there are some of you out there who still don't know about the Community Police Commission, but I would like to introduce you to the executive director of the Community Police Commission, ECMA.
Hi everybody, it's really great to be here tonight. It was really good to start with a very innocent conversation. I was walking down Rainier Avenue, eating a Mollywood's ice cream cone, after just having run into one of our commissioners on the street, and I see Tony outside of Columbia City Theater tabling, and for this upcoming series, this upcoming debates. And so we started chatting. I talked a little bit about what I did, and we got into some conversations about police, and it turned into, did you know about this in policing? And did you know about this other thing in policing?
And I'm saying, no, I didn't know about that in policing, and no, I didn't know about that in policing either. And I consider myself a person who's informed.
And that's how it is for most of Seattle. So I think a lot of the things that we're going to get into tonight, a lot of what we've been talking about in this series is policing is changing in Seattle rapidly. Every single week there are new things happening that are affecting people. And a lot of times this is moving at, they used to say the speed of government was slow. They used to say good enough for government, meaning it's going to take forever. At this point, I think that government speed is like light speed. And it is moving right past communities, and they are not having a chance to engage. And that's what we're here for. So I have more interesting people than me to introduce tonight. And so is it okay if I go down this illustrious panel here? I'm going to start with Commissioner and Cindy, Ken and Cindy. Ken is the co-chair, one of the two co-chairs of the Community Engagement Committee. Welcome. Great. I'm going to go next to Commissioner Joseph Sega, also one of the two co-chairs of the Community Engagement Committee, and also an executive director of Oceana Northwest, which is an amazing organization that is serving Oceana and Pacifica communities. And I next will introduce Commissioner Jeremy Holmes, one of our newest commissioners, just came on board officially within the last week, I think. And that officially means confirmed by the City Council. So all of these folks here have been confirmed by the City Council, and Jeremy has joined us as well. I'm really excited about that. Also on the Community Engagement Committee. So it's a good place to be tonight. All right, where should we start?
Well, that's a good, what I would like to do really quickly is just run over a couple of things that we talked about before, and I'll take a lot of time to spend talking about them, because you can go back and you can look and you can review yourself. Our first show, along with introducing the CPC, we talked about this thing called the consent decree. Don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it now unless it ends up being what we talk about. But can we, in 60 seconds, talk about the consent decree, why we had that discussion, and if you're unfamiliar with what it, at this point, was, EC panel, go ahead.
The consent decree essentially means that Seattle Police Department at one point was exhibiting such egregious, unconstitutional behavior and conduct in policing that 39 community-based organizations in Seattle wrote a letter to the Federal Department of Justice asking for an investigation into the Seattle Police Department. The DOJ conducted that investigation, and they said, yeah, you're right, communities. And this was because of tons of police violence, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the killing of John T. Williams that Mario mentioned earlier. And so at that point, the city of Seattle was sued by the federal government. They came to a settlement agreement, and that settlement agreement and some other documents were all bundled together into this thing called the consent decree. So that began 13 years of federal oversight of the police department. It meant that the Seattle Police Department was required to make a number of reforms, a number of improvements based on what that investigation had found. And that federal consent decree was just ended in early September.
Did y'all know that there was a federal consent decree, that there was oversight by the federal government? 13 years?
Oh, wow.
You didn't know that? I didn't know that. Anyway, on September 3rd, it ended. Correct?
That's right. That was 15 years, just over
15
years
Okay.
From the killing of John T. Williams. And so the federal consent decree was in place for 13 years, but it concluded just after the 15th anniversary of John T. Williams' death.
And so, what is taking the place of oversight of the police department, or has something happened that we can now feel more comfortable that is internally an oversight process that we as community members can feel will keep us safe from the police, basically.
Police accountability was always meant to be in the hands of the people of Seattle. That is an incredibly important thing. All of us in city government, all of us that work for the city of Seattle, we work to serve communities, we work to serve people. We work for the people, we are funded by the people's money. So now after the end of federal oversight, accountability goes back into the hands of the people of Seattle. Our commission was created because of the consent decree, but we have now been expanded in city law. Our mission and mandate goes beyond the four corners of the consent decree. So we now have an ongoing permanence in the accountability system, and our role is to amplify community voices and make sure that they're heard in the highest echelons of the Seattle Police Department and across city government, that there's an opportunity for every community member to have their voice heard through our department that directly impacts the way that police practices and policies operate in Seattle.
Okay, really quickly, does anyone else up here, before I go on, if you want to say anything about the consent decree? If you don't, that's fine, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, but anybody? Okay. I'm sorry.
60 seconds.
Okay. So that's one of the things that we spent over an hour talking about was this thing called the consent decree. Because of the business that I own, I was concerned about this thing called chronic nuisance, which for me was something that was created to control crowds at nightclubs in the core downtown area at closing time. That's what I knew about it. Boy, was I wrong. So, we spent some time talking about chronic nuisance. Just really quickly, can we talk about this thing called chronic nuisance that my understanding was created to control crowds at let out and have nightclubs be responsible for those crowds. But did it just evolve into something else? What was the process, EC, about chronic nuisance? Check this out.
Chronic nuisance is a term that I don't know why exactly is used because it's not accessible to communities. I think that when we think about being culturally responsive to communities and government, it is really important to label things clearly so that people know what they mean. And chronic nuisance, it's not really clear what that term means. Some might argue that my older brother is a chronic nuisance, you know. But in this case, we're talking about this set of laws that's really meant to address commercial. I just slipped that in, you know. I hope you're watching YouTube. So this is really meant to address commercial and residential properties where a number of nuisance activities occur at that property, and that gives the chief of police to put in place certain corrective measures. So let me break that down a little bit more. If you have 3 times that the police are called to a property, and the police report is describing criminal activity, it doesn't mean that criminal activity is actually found. We're not talking about a standard of evidence here. We're talking about 3 police incidents that describe the criminal activity of the property, 3 noise complaints, 3 incidents of unlawful dumping, right? You've seen those like dumpsters where everybody in the neighborhood is like a community that everybody's throwing their trash there, you know, when they fill up their own. So these types of activities, you have these chronic nuisances. That means that the chief of police can declare that property a chronic nuisance. And if that property is declared a chronic nuisance, they can assess a fine.
Wait a minute. Hold on to your seats when you know how much this fine is. And we're not just talking about commercial businesses, we're talking about residents.
This also applies to residential zones.
This is the fine.
A fine can be assessed of $37,500 and $750 a day until that chronic nuisance is remedied to the satisfaction of the chief of police. That is up from a $25,000 fine that was in place previously and a $500 a day fine. That's been raised, both of those penalties, by 50%. The explanation by City Council was inflation, which is not how inflation works.
And so I just want to say, and I'm not bashing the police right now, I'm just saying, get that for 13 years, there was oversight by the federal government. And so now we have this chronic nuisance law. And And so for any random reason, and some of them aren't even, it could be roads or whatever. And it's $37,500 fine. That is $500 a day. If you are looking to say, okay, I need to find some justice on this.
$750 a day.
$750 a day. You go back to the police department.
That's right, and that was one of the concerns that the CPC had and the community members had, right? Is that some of these nuisance activities are things that are not necessarily within a property owner's control. Rodents don't tend to stay at one address. So if your neighbor's got rodents, it's not, you don't necessarily have control about whether or not they decide to cross the property line into your property. Unlawful dumping is another thing. You could have a dumpster outside of your business. Somebody could use that or have access to it. That could create a nuisance issue. A lot of other things. Police incidents. So we had feedback from a homeowner on Capitol Hill, black homeowner, who has a son that has mental health illness or mental illness. So there's often police calls that are made to that residence that are outside of her control and are essentially with her family member who's dealing with crisis. And those types of things can have a property nuisance. Most people don't have $37,500 on hand. Most people don't have an additional $750 a day. Most people don't have the ability to get to the chief of police and make sure that he himself is satisfied with that issue. And most people might question whether the chief of police is somebody who should be dictating whether or not the rodents have been successfully addressed. Seems like there's other agencies that do that. And so this is some of the concerns that we heard from community and some of what we raised to council regarding chronic nuisance laws.
Does anyone want to comment on chronic nuisance before we move on? Anyone?
Yeah. I just wanted to add, we've had, as a commissioner, sometimes we have folks reach out to us and address some issues, talk about chronic nuisance. Like we had a reverend down the street reach out to us, but they shared on the same building block as a hookah bar that was having interesting activity in the parking lot. So they were calling multiple times, but guess what? With this nuisance law, they would be, as their building, the more they call their building, because they're calling on the same tenant in the same building, the building will undergo a fine. So you're calling between, should I call or should I not? So they reach, because with this law, it covers the building. So if you call, you're the one who's going to end up paying a fine, or you buy it up among the renters, or whatever the case might be. So they came to us, and we were able to take it to a level that most folks cannot reach to, when it's the chief, and then the chief was able to come down to address so that they do not get that. And that's why, that's one of our biggest, we advocate for community that way. Please reach out to us so that we can take it further and make your tax dollars work for you.
And you know what's really interesting about that is that resident or that community member had been calling the police over and over and over again. I mean, at the time that we're elevating things to, and when I say highest levels of SPD, I'm talking about like command staff, executives within the police department. By the time we're elevating things there are photographs of power lines that are being run off of their property into unlicensed hookah places. There are videos of people, engaged in dangerous activities on property. The police had not been responding for several months. And so imagine having your property deemed a chronic nuisance when you were literally like screaming at the police, like, please help me. And you're not getting that help. And it continues to dishevel. And then, I'm chronic nuisance and now you have to pay us money. It's kind of, so it makes you wonder how well we're serving people when we still have these existing problems in communities, and then we create laws that further penalize people for the lack of support that they're getting from government.
Okay, now I know that there are folks out there who are comfortable with the police department. And I'm not saying whether I am or whether I'm not for purposes of being on the stage. I know how I feel in my personal life about it. But the police provide, I think, a valuable service to our community. And some of you may disagree with that. But police accountability is what we're talking about. I'm going to mention the third and the part of the series that we're talking about. How many of you out there in the audience, and maybe who are watching or listening right now, know that you are being surveilled by the police department? Okay. Well, you are. It was 57 cameras, is that right? This was a pilot study, right? And this recently, the mayor and the city council added more cameras. Did you vote on this? Is this okay with you? Does it make you feel safer to know that there are more cameras watching you constantly? Now, I may be getting this wrong. I think there's a period between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that where the cameras are not watching, which is when I want them to be watching, between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. And part of this is that city council maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, voted on this, and we didn't hear about it. We didn't hear that they were adding more cameras. Now, again, whether I think that cameras are a good idea or a bad idea, is not the point. It's just as community. One of the concerns that I hear from folks is, well, what is this surveillance going to be used for? Who has access to it? Does the federal government have access to it? And as we know, with the federal government, putting the National Guard in various cities, and there are issues that folks are having with ICE and raids. This could cause problems with some people. So please explain surveillance and what it is that we were talking about. I just did it, but that was in 10 seconds, 30 seconds. And so surveillance was one of the other things that we're talking about in this series. I just wanted to go through really quickly. Police accountability. You're being surveilled. Is that cool? Does that make you feel safer? Or do you feel like you can be targeted?
All right, let me try to do this quickly because I know I want to get to our panelists too and hear your thoughts, and I really want to hear from all of you there, your questions and your thoughts as well. So surveillance, last fall, 2024, 57 cameras went up in Seattle, and those were part of what was called a surveillance technology pilot. It was launched alongside what is called the Real-Time Crime Center, or TCC. And so imagine a command center with a lot of screens, right? 57 cameras were hooked up, and the purpose of this was ostensibly to make communities safer. This year, within the past few months, and like all these changes are blurring together, but I think that around the September-October timeframe, there was a proposal to expand that surveillance pilot to 3 additional areas. That would be Capitol Hill, the Central District, so up and down 23rd Avenue where Garfield High School is, north to Cherry Street and south on Jackson, and then the Stadium District. Not a ton of concern or surprise about the Stadium District. You know, people are going there watching games, highly public area. We've got World Cup coming, and that was not a real big deal for people, but there was a lot of community pushback around the Capitol Hill and Central District expansions, with those being Seattle's historic Black community and Seattle's historic queer community, and with existing concerns about things like immigration rates, with gender-affirming care and other types of services that people would be seeking in Seattle that the federal government has expressed a hostility towards. And the idea that these kinds of tools could be weaponized to continue to police already over-policed areas. So again, these were some of the concerns that CPC raised. What's really important to note is that the City Council, of which there are some seats up for re-election in a couple weeks, the City Council, on the day that surveillance technology expansion was passed, by 7 out of the 9 council members, more than 120 people provided public comment, all of which was opposing the expansion of that pilot. And it was still passed with a 7-2 vote. So, you know, when we talk about how well is government serving communities, it's these types of things that you look to as a measure.
All right, any comments from the other panelists before we move on and get started?
EC, do you want to tell them who the 2 were?
Well, I mean, since that information is publicly available, it would, the 2 that voted against the expansion were Councilmember Alexis Mercedes Rainier
city on the council 2 position, I think they were in sync about what they thought about this. But the point is, you're electing officials, so here's the thing that I was worried about with the police department. My biggest concern was the fit the description thing. You know, that was really okay, fit description. I've been pulled over, like a lot of people who are black and of color have been. Get used to it. I'm saying it's cool. I'm just saying you understand. Because you have to. Otherwise, you could end up in a bad position. So you learn from an early age, okay, when this happens, these are some things you should not do. These are some things that could get you into trouble. And if you don't understand why you're being stopped, you know, if you're black, you really can't curse out the police officer. Maybe some folks can, but these are the things that I was concerned about. I wasn't concerned about surveillance, chronic nuisance, and all the other things that we're talking about. And that's why I'm so excited to hear from y'all about police accountability and what you think it is and what you think that means to you and what it looks like. But I want to go to the panel and get started right now. And this is an open question, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts and your stories. And we have the ability and the opportunity to hear your stories about your own experiences, good or bad, with the police department. And I'll tell you a good one. I was stopped by the police, and I had been in a rush, and I didn't have my driver's license with me. And pulled me over, I don't have my driver's license. I'm like, oh man, this is not going to end good. The officer went back to his car. I can't make this up. And comes back to me, and he says, Tony D. Just call me Tony D. He says, brother, we appreciate what you do in the community. And says, I spoke with someone, and it's not going to be a problem. And then he's talking to me for about 10 minutes, and I'm saying, like, dude, I gotta go. But so that was a good experience that I just wanted to share. I've had multiple bad experiences with the police, but I just wanted to share that. So I will go to y'all now. And what do you think are the top 3 things that our Seattle Police Department should be focusing on? And I know that there are a lot, but what do you think are the top 3 things that our Seattle Police Department should be focusing on? You know, it could be an easy one. You could say crime, you could say drugs, you could say homelessness, shelter folks, but there's a lot more than that. What do y'all think are the top 3 things? Because I want to get everybody engaged in this conversation and see where your heads are at, that the Seattle Police Department should be focusing on. Start on that.
I can certainly start with one. And I feel like it might sound overly simple. Sorry if y'all can't hear me. Showing up. And that means showing up before it's too late. You know, I've lived in a place now, I live just off of Aurora, where I see all sorts of manner of things go on, and you try to report, and you try to get some help, and they don't show up, and then until it's too late. I mean, and the apartment next door to where we live, a young man lost his life, and these were a situation that could have been solved if somebody had shown up at time. If somebody would have taken the warnings ahead of time to step up and do something. But being that we live in a place in my neighborhood where they're not concerned about what's going on with us. They don't care until there's something that they want to, give you a hard time about.
Are you talking about response time or just not showing up?
Not showing up. Not being there when, underserved communities need help. We find ourselves many times in positions where
so we can get through this. We'll go on to from our man here. What do you think should be the top priority that our police department should be concerned about in regards to, I'm going to say, public safety?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So me and Kelly Simbi, we used to run New Horizons, which is an agency that supports youth and adult homeless youth. And one of the things that was super beneficial, we hated police, by the way, when we worked with our young people, because oftentimes our young people experience disparate treatment from police. But we started to gain a better relationship with police when they instituted mental health response team, right? So as opposed to sending police out to our young people that were not trained in mental health crisis response, the Seattle Left funded mental health responders, and we were able to triage the calls. So when there were mental health crises that was happening, we specifically sent officers that were trained in crisis de-escalation. And that, the difference between those officers that were trained and had compassion and understood a lot of the reasons why our young people were in crisis, it was beautiful to see them treat our young people respectfully, and it usually didn't end up, in more escalation. It usually de-escalated quickly. And so I would say, police officers should have, basic designated crisis response training so they understand how to appropriately work with communities that are most impacted mentally ill, especially communities of color that speak English as a second language that have mental health crisis. These are the families that are often experiencing the brutalities of police because police are not understanding their language, and because they don't understand mental health challenges, they, what do? You respond out of your lizard brain, which is fight, flight, and all of that. And so that's one issue for that.
Okay, we're going to have one. So I'm hearing show up. When you show up, have training to be able to deal with whatever crisis is taking place at that time. Is that, I'm not sure of it. And Ken, the most important priority for the Seattle Police Department, for you, what would that be?
For me, would be around community engagement. We host what's called the Rainier Beach Action Coalition hosts a back-to-back and back-to-school event right in the Rainier Beach Plaza, and we have tons of young families and young folks come in, and I've seen an impact when some of you might not know Detective Cookie, Officer Cookie, Chief Officer National Detective Cookie, does a chess thing in the community, has a chess named after her in the corner right by Rainier Beach, further south. And that, whenever she walks into the space, it's not tense shoulders, it's not like people reaching out to go hug her. We can't just have Detective Cookie, we need several other individuals who may look or not look like myself, like in community outreach. You've seen those fun YouTube videos of a Caucasian police officer pulling out of his car and playing basketball with the kids. It warms your heart, but then it also builds trust. We need community outreach prioritized, especially in Black, brown neighborhoods, because that's where we see a lot of distrust. And I just believe that community outreach is going to go a very, very long way, especially since you guys have heard of the thing for putting police back in specific schools here and there. So with that, we're going to have some sort of trust built with the department.
So you're all advocates. I'm saying that, not that you're not regular people as well. You got show up. You got show up with the training necessary to deal with the situation. You got community engagement. Easy, what would you say? The number one, I know for you, is many of the number one priority that you think that the Seattle Police Department should be responsible for when it comes to public safety?
They made it easy for me because those three hit on the head. Anything that I would have said about building trust, being able to respond to crisis. We know that crime is a function of mental health and or substance abuse is present in the majority of things. That's why our city is lucky to have the community-assisted response and engagement team, CARE team, which is a department that was born out of SPD but is now its own department. They also run the 911 dispatch center. Previously, they have been, employed a model that is like a co-response model. They respond along with SPD. And if you've seen some of the recent news around this issue, there are a number of times when SPD has actually said, Kara, please don't show up, or send Kara home. And these are folks that are trained to be able to respond to these types of crises in situations where a person does not need a law enforcement response, they need something very different. And so I think these are investments that should be made. And I think that the Seattle Police Department would do very well to listen to community. I think that sometimes in government we assume that we can sit around a table in a concrete tower and come up with solutions and throw them at community. And I think it's disrespectful. It doesn't recognize that community members really have a lot of the solutions to the problems they're facing in their community. If I got a problem in my house, just like if you have a problem in your house, you are the best person to determine what that solution is, not somebody coming in and saying, I know what's going on, even though I'm not there, and I know a better way to solve that thing. That is a patriarchal way to look at how to police a city. And so I think that they would do well for some genuine community engagement that really exercises cultural humility and understands that there are many, many, many cultures outside of this dominant white culture framework that we employ a lot of times in government that have been successfully dealing with crime within their own communities successfully. And we can learn a lot from that. So I think that those are all good things. And I think that there's a lot of work to do.
Now, I'll tell you why I'm surprised. I'm surprised because no one said keep our community safe.
Because those things do. If we build trust with our police department, we are safer. If they are trained and specialized to be able to respond to crises, we are safer. If they show up, we are safer. We heard from the Native American Advisory Council to the SPD, right? Indigenous Advisory Board to the SPD. We heard that there was some sexual assault crimes that they were getting a response in 8 to 12 hours after a sexual assault has occurred. I mean, what does that do to a victim? And so, yeah, our communities will be safer if we have police officers that we trust. I mean, look at all these communities that don't even call the police when a crime occurs in their neighborhood because they're more afraid of the police than they are of whoever's criminalizing them in their own neighborhood. And so, this is an ongoing issue, but the sooner that we're able to bridge that gap and build trust with police. And I want to be really clear, Seattle Police Commission, we are not the police, we are a fully independent police department. And the reason I make that distinction is it is not our job to increase trust in the police department. It is our job to make it very clear what they need to do in order to build trust in communities.
All right, we're talking about police accountability. I want to continue this conversation, but you know what, really quick, and I hope you all don't mind. I'd like to hear a couple of stories from y'all out there. Can a couple people come up here on the stage? Don't be bashful. Do you have a story? Come on up here. This is not Q&A time, but I'm just curious what y'all think the number one priority should be for our Seattle Police Department. You're not ready to make that move yet? Don't worry. Somebody come up here and come on up. Thank you. And I know what you mean when you say it'll make our community safer. But I was just surprised that, that nobody said, hey, there's more police presence makes our community safe. Anyway, would you mind telling us your name? And then,
my name is Amanda.
Amanda, what do you think should be the number one priority for our Seattle Police Department? We're talking about police accountability, and remember, there are people who have made their life's work addressing family members being killed by police as well, and that didn't come up. But
Well, I have a story to tell.
okay.
The story is featured, but first, I'm going to say that what I would like to see the police have is humanity, compassion, humanity. And this is like, for example, I'm going to give like compassion or humanity, like have some common sense. Like, for example, I'm going to give an example of a very touchy subject. Everybody knew about Officer Dave and Candula incident. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the video? Well, I've seen another video that he was upset after the incident. He was upset And then the fellow officer went to try to comfort him. So that is humanity. And why can't they extend that humanity to other people? So this is a personal thing because my son had an incident with the police officer and he had a meltdown, a breakdown. And the police officer and the vice principal, they just left and they just stayed there. They wouldn't let him leave until they complied with their request. So that is not humanity. Where was the humanity in that? And in a John Grisham novel, he talked about the police officers having carry a teddy bear in the back of the car, so that in case they run into any incident with a small child or something, or in trauma or something, accident or something, then they would give the teddy bear to the child, and that makes a difference. So what we're missing is, I'm not saying that all officers are missing humanity. I'm just saying that we all need a little more common sense, more humanity. So I know that they have to remain calm during most situations, but when you see somebody having a meltdown because of your presence, you should not just go ahead and ignore it like this and anything to do with you.
Before we move on, anybody else? I know you have a story you wanted to share as well.
Anybody else want to share?
But anybody else want to share? I think it's a real simple question. What do you think should be the top priority for the Seattle Police Department? Nobody? No thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, I know you're thinking something. I can tell you that when I was younger, my top priority for the Seattle Police Department was don't shoot me. I was younger. That was my top priority, even if it was for a traffic stop. What do I have to do to not get shot? And anyway, interesting here. I'm going to give you one more opportunity here. Anybody out there, I know coming up on the stage might be a little, but your story might be the story that someone else has. And it doesn't have to be, that you're afraid of the police. It doesn't have to be that you think the police are our enemy number one. It can be whatever story. I just want to know what you think the top priority of the Seattle Police Department should be. Should it be responding to businesses that are broken into? Should it be responding to domestic violence, anything? Yeah, come on up.
Can I respond to a little bit what?
Yeah, certainly.
I appreciate you talking about there needs to be a focus on really looking at the humanity of police officers, and it brought up trauma stewardship for me, because for a lot of our folks that are responding to crisis, like in hospitals and on the streets, when your body and mind becomes littered with trauma, you become desensitized, right? And so another person becomes a number, and eventually, if you're not resting or taking care of yourself, you're ignoring the human. That's incredible, because that's your 20th encounter of crisis. And so I like that you brought that up. That there needs to really be a focus on the humanity of officers. Really a strong look at how we triage the trauma that police officers are experiencing, and what are the places that those officers are given and training that are given to really receive healing. Because you cannot take on that much tertiary trauma and feel like it's not affecting your humanity, right? Because then that allows for victims, and the people that are suffering, right, are black and brown people, because they're the ones that the officers are not paying attention to because of their internal bias, racial bias, right? And then you have these horrible cases that come up of people being left in their cells untreated, and they're having a heart attack, right? And they can disclose that they're having a heart attack. But the officers are are not paying attention because they've been dehumanized because of the roles that they've played. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that was brought up.
Thank you. Absolutely. I just wanted to make a quick plug for the weeds that we get into as a part of the CPC and the difference that you can make as a community member if you share your feedback with us. Just to talk about the training of officers, right? We talked about that's after they become officers. Some of the weeds that we get into are, I don't know if anybody's heard of the Civil Service Commission. But it's another city department, much like us, but also independent, and they deal with the testing of officers to qualify them for the profession or to qualify them for promotions of ranks within policing, right? They also do this for fire, but our role is policing. And one of the things that the test for, there's many, many different things, is an officer's capacity to abuse a position of power. So just giving you an example. So if you have thoughts on what are the types of components, right, humanity and other types of things that we should be looking at for officers even before to qualify them to be able to wear a badge, before they even receive their first training as an officer. These are some of the pieces of feedback that we need so that we can lift those up and get those to the right places. And so these conversations are really great, and I just want to invite you that your ideas, your thoughts, your policy ideas, anything that you can think of to solve the problem, we will take that and we will do what we can to advocate that. We really would appreciate that type of feedback.
This is your opportunity. Now you know what they do. And you can hold them accountable. That they will take whatever it is that you have to say, let me say it into the highest echelon. Just give us your name, and then if we know what the question is, what should be the number one priority for the Seattle Police?
My name is Gina Petrie, and kind of playing off of something you were saying about bias in policing, which is to end that. Bias against communities of color, LGBTQ community, people are homeless, are experiencing a mental health crisis, but also, part of how I come at this in my interaction with the police have been as an activist and being able to express my First Amendment right along with other people and not be, come after because of that. And I feel especially concerned about that, not just for myself, but for other, people who we know that this is a city that protests a lot, and for good reasons, but that, there's a lot of bias in who gets their right to protest and who doesn't, and who gets to, who is gone after as a result. I mean, I've certainly seen the police collaborating, maybe unofficially official with, some more right-wing people in my experience, and, treating them in a way that is much kinder than those of us who might be opposing them. So I'm especially concerned about that, given, it was mentioned, and we know the possibility of federal troops coming to Seattle, and I know what Mayor Harrell's response is to that, but I also don't believe that there's a guarantee that those of us who might protest that our First Amendment rights will be protected. So I think that has to be made clear to the police. I mean, I was also at the May 24th protest where I saw how they treated those of us who were, for people who may not know, but we were protesting some very bigoted Christian nationalists in Capitol Hill. And the police responded to our side with a lot of repression, put it that way. So,
a lot of what?
Repression.
Repression.
Yes, I mean, slamming people to the ground, pepper spray, arresting people who were doing nothing. That was part of their response that day. And I've seen that many times before.
Your side, as opposed to the other side.
Correct.
And what was the response to the other side?
Protecting them. I mean, they put up a fence so that our side could not go to their event, and the police were facing our side as if we were the ones causing problems. Now, there were a lot of people there that day with a lot of different viewpoints, but I also happen to know there were a lot of people who were picked up in that, who were just there trying to express our viewpoint. So,
Well, thank you. That's the whole point of this conversation. Police accountability is to find out your perspective on it.
I would love to, thank you, Gina. I really appreciate that. And I would love to respond to that, just giving more glimpses of what CPC has done. We are engaged in what is called a Sentinel event review. It's a post-incident review of what happened on May 24th. And so what Gina's referencing is a protest that happened. It started with a Christian group, and I use that term in quotes, not to be offensive to anybody, but because of the values that are being espoused by this group and the multiple community concerns about whether or not that represents their view of Christianity. So I put that out there for your own decision making. But the group is notably anti-trans, anti-2S LGBTQIA+. And so that day there was a protest by that group, or a demonstration by that group. Counter-protesters showed up. 23 arrests were made and several incidents of use of force. And so CPC is involved in community engagement, which means talking to members of community that were there that day to be able to collect their experiences around policing. There's also a review by Office of Inspector General of hundreds of hours, possibly thousands of hours of body cam footage to be able to unpack that incident. What we are looking for is systemic improvements to how SPD responds to that incident and other incidents. So these are also things that we do as well. And so, everything that you said is absolutely correct. And a lot of the community concern about bias policing around where protection happens and doesn't happen. And this even connects back to our surveillance technology conversation, because the rights of protesters and the idea that surveillance technology would be used to criminalize people that are exercising their First Amendment rights is a significant concern that's come up around surveillance. We've seen the federal government, through its National Guard, take over local jurisdictions. They just so happen to be blue cities, or cities that have expressed themselves as sanctuary cities, or have values that are seen as progressive, or the woke agenda, if you're quoting the federal government. And so these are community concerns, and these are real things. And so we really look forward to the outcome of that Sentinel event review and the panel that is made up of folks that were there that day as well.
Okay, go back to the panel here, but I'm not going to stop engaging you in this part of the conversation. So before I do, does anyone else want to come up here really quickly and share something? Come on up. That's what we're talking about. And just start with your name, and then I'll ask you the second question. What do you think the top priority of the Seattle Police Partnership?
I'm Robert Engel. I'm an organizer for police accountability. So Sean Barnes has said before that he thinks accountability comes before the fact. Have you guys heard this before from him? I've seen him in like a couple interviews say this idea that, he thinks accountability isn't this punitive thing, but it's instead something that happens during like training, which is kind of crazy to me, because those are just like completely different things. It doesn't make sense at all. And it really, really worries me when, as Amanda so rightfully brought up earlier, Kevin Dave, the guy who killed John Vigantula, and, only 2 years ago, had a history of drunk driving, right? In Tucson, he had several citations. I know one for literally drunk driving. Didn't have a valid Washington driver's license when he was hired. And then now I'm hearing from like the urbanists that apparently the police department is trying to lower their recruitment standards so they can hire more cops. We've hired 130 cops this year compared to 13 last year. So, my question, I guess, is it's not a question, that's crazy. That we're lowering the standards so much, that's unreal, and the whole, it's just we're setting, this is the setup for just sending out a bunch of the worst police department, the police recruitment we could have.
So I don't know, maybe higher standards and not lowering them would be my thing.
Okay. I have a question I want to ask, but out there by applause, do we need more police officers? Wow. Wait, I'm going to ask again. By applause, do we need more police officers?
I think they heard you.
Okay. I didn't hear anybody. So nobody out there in the audience thinks that we need more police officers, even though. Okay, Amanda thinks that we need more police officers.
The question that you're asking us is not an applause answer that I can give you. It's a discussion question. So I would applause.
Yeah, I think. Come on up here and tell me what you.
You want police here?
I don't know if I asked the right question. I'm just wondering if people feel like, because that's one of the reasons why we're having these changes in city council and all this other stuff. People feel like, anyway, go ahead.
So what I was saying is, I don't think your question was posed in a way that I could applaud for to give a real answer to.
Wow. Because I said we would need more police officers.
Yeah.
You can't applaud that.
It's not a yes or no thing, it's a discussion. A discussion about it.
Wow. Okay.
My thoughts kind of go with the rest of the group here. It's like we need to have different changes need to happen. If the quality of the police officers, the training, the community work, those things actually go more towards me saying I think the police officers that we have now would be good, but it's a quality, not a quantity.
That's a wonderful response to that. Yeah, and your response is, you don't have to, you can say anything that you want to. This is an open forum.
No, I really, but that's our co-chair. This is what our co-chair, you guys. She'll be closing us with a song later. So what she said was powerful because, yeah, I mean, when my truck was stolen and I go Engine 1, I called the police and they said, that's like a needle in a haystack. We're not going to look for that. We're understaffed, you know? But that was I needed my truck. It was stolen. I was bombed. It was my 79 Chevy Bonanza, 350 engine. I put work in it. Classic. So all that to say that I wanted, at that time, I wanted to check in and make, if you ask me at that point, I'd be like, yeah, these guys are short staffed, no one can look for my truck. But then if you get more folks, not just because we're getting numbers, so thank you for sharing what you shared, but we're getting quality, not just quantity, that makes a huge difference. So I can't say, no, I don't want any police officers. But what type of police officers are we getting in? If we're getting the type that you said, that they're reducing the quality, and no, absolutely not. I will applaud at that point. But if we're getting detective cookie standard, deep rooted in the community, absolutely. Let's fill this place with police officers that look like us, that are going to have humanity. Then yes, please. So thank you for clarifying that and for not applauding on it, because that is a discussion. Thank you.
Just share your name, and then you know the question, however you want to answer, whatever you feel is, what do you think should be Seattle Police Department's #1 priority?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank this panel that are built by Rainier Beach Radio Station, Rainier Beach Radio Station. And second of all, I want to thank Margito Argo, who invited me here. So my name is Lata Ahmed. I'm the Drivers Union representative in Washington. So, and this is very important. So, I want to raise our concerns about, on behalf of 1,000 drivers out there, about the safety and transparency. And we have lost several drivers while they were working. And many of those cases remain unresolved in the city of Seattle, or lack clear communication with the families and as a driver's representative of Union 2, right? So, what specific steps are being taken by the city of Seattle and the city police department to ensure full transparency, accountability, and timely investigation into this tragic incident? And how will the city work with the drivers' representatives like us to keep our community informed and safe and protect moving forwards? That would be my question. Thank you.
Good question. So, this is what y'all do, so you have any answer for him, or is the answer, we don't have any
Well,
answer?
let me be clear, it's not what we do, it's what the police do. And, you know, I thank you for your question, and I think that this is a huge concern. I think I saw a video of someone from the drivers' union having a conversation recently with Bruce Harrell about this issue, is that right? And I think that his response was something like understaffing, you know, of the department. And this goes back to the conversation that we were having earlier. You know, we have community members that are crying out to the police department, crying out to the city, and asking them to address these issues. And what they're hearing is, sorry, we don't have enough cops. But these have been long-standing issues within the police department. And you wonder how sometimes there is a lot of attention and energy towards certain efforts, but some communities are still waiting in line. It's like, if you have understaffing problems, then why does it seem like some communities are still getting served, even in spite of this? And so these are issues that I would love to partner with you to help to raise to the police department, to the city of Seattle, because it's an unacceptable answer, right? And there's a recent initiative that was launched on Aurora Avenue to combat sex trafficking on Aurora Avenue. And the initiative deals with taking pictures of license plates of folks that are in this suspected activity. The reason that the police department promulgated this initiative was because of understaffing. They said we only have 3 detectives in this area. That's not enough to be able to actually address this problem. So this is what we're going to throw at it instead. So these are the types of solutions that are unacceptable. We still expect, even with understaffing, that we're solving the needs and priorities of communities. And so I don't have an answer for why the Seattle Police Department is not doing more to address these issues. I don't have an answer for why the city is not taking this more seriously. But I can tell you that we are happy to help advocate and make this push alongside you.
And to add on to that, so the reason why DC said that we don't have an answer, and also that that's not what we do, is because I did feel, thank you for asking that question, sir, is because that question is directed to the police department. So if you're, sorry? So if you're able to send that to Marjitu, and then we, similar to how the Reverend reached out to me, like this is something that EC does directly. I'm talking tomorrow, if not the next day, right to whether it's the chief or whoever represents in the office, and she or our team or whatever thread we're going to be on, I'm going to ask that directly and ask them to give us a response so that we can then give it back to you, especially since you are in communication very good. So we'll be able to respond to that via the right channels as soon as we possibly can. I'm talking in an email tomorrow to the department.
It sounds like, because like you said, I said, well, if there's a staffing problem, maybe we need more police. But nobody said, no. Yeah. So, okay, well, maybe it depends on the quality of police. But so it sounds like a trust issue. So let's take a look at this, and y'all can respond to this too. Oh, wait a minute, we got some more folks over here. But what I wanted to know, I need a little time to think about it. What can we do as a community? What can the police do to build trust? But I want to get to some more remarks here. Go ahead. Say your name and then.
My name is David. I'm from the Columbia City area. And I just wanted to make a statement, and I had a question for the commission. I had good experiences when I seen Sean Barnes, the police chief, and I really was inspired, the position that he took when he said he would like to go to jail for resisting federal troops. I think that's a position that no other police chief in the nation have actually really took. My second question, and I think it kind of shows the challenges and the problems that people have, because I think that I'm one of the only persons that's like, one of the only black males that's descended of a slave, and we have a lot of different demographic issues, and it's very dynamic. Has the commission considered this segregating racial demographics to distinguish African American descendants of slavery from other black populations, such as recent African immigrants, given the distinct historical experiences, systematic harms, and cultural erasures faced by descendants of U.S. slavery? I know that in Seattle now, the demographics of blacks are 7%. You know, so that's my question to the panel. And I think a lot of different issues with the clubs, with the taxi drivers, if we can change the demographics, and then we can actually be able to tackle the issues that we need to tackle.
Wow, I think that's a great question. Commission, your response, your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I'm going to say right now, I'm not saying on behalf of the Community Police Commission, because I think that this question is so sensitive and personal in nature that it's hard to answer that on behalf of a government organization. And so I'm going to answer it myself as a Nigerian immigrant. And I don't know how popular this answer is going to be with you. I am not for diaspora wars. I am not for segregating black people. Any more than the Seattle police is asking me if I'm an immigrant or not when they pull me over, or my brother whether he's an immigrant or not when they're holding a gun to his head. So I'm not for that. The other part for me that's complicated about this question, especially as posed, is to think about separating descendants of slavery. There is no separation. When you think about families being separated through the slave trade, both sides were affected, both in Africa and here. My grandmother's brother was sold, and we are from Nigeria. Like literally, I came here as a Nigerian immigrant. And so to think that there is not victims that have been affected by the slave trade, both here and in Africa, when recent African immigrants come, they have dealt with that same destruction, that generational destruction and colonization that has occurred there, that has occurred here in the States. And so personally, I am not for making those types of disaggregations, because what we know about how these systems impact black people, these systems are not disaggregating that information. They're not disaggregating when we come to hospitals and we're asking for help. They're not disaggregating when black women are dying at a higher rate of maternal complications during childcare, regardless of education, regardless of the recency of their immigration status or any of these issues. They are not disaggregated when they're applying to college or for a housing loan. And so for that same reason, my advocacy is never going to disaggregate those populations. We share the same skin. And for that reason, I think that we are better united than what I consider a diaspora war, which separates us from each other. The last thing I'll say is there was a time years ago when I was in contracting and procurement for the state. I went to an organization that was talking about awarding contracts to minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And there was anger in that organization because a top contract for the city had been awarded to a Nigerian firm. And that was seen as a disservice to the black community. I don't think that I've ever been more hurt personally or professionally than that day. And so when I think about my work in police accountability, and I think about my work both personally and professionally as a Black woman, to me, there will not be a distinction in how I advocate for those groups.
Would you like to respond? Is there another comment?
Yeah, I mean, so similarly, like with indigenous peoples, right? We have like our indigenous Coast Salish folks that have experienced colonization specific to Washington, and then we have indigenous communities that are also known as urban Indians and also Pacific Islanders that come from U.S. colonial territories, right? That end up coming over here, but the anti-sentiment, policies, the racist, genocidal, anti-indigenous sentiment and policies that were created to punish Coast Salish people are disproportionately impacted also urban Indians and Pacific Islanders that are coming into this region, right? They might not necessarily have been historical targets, but they are, they still experience the harm, right? And so we acknowledge that there are communities that have been historical targets. There's no doubt about that. And also we collaborate with all communities that have been harmed, right? Because of these systems. Anti-Blackness harms so many people, right? Anti-Indigenous policies harm so many people. And they don't, as a young person, when I was harassed by police, and they took me in, they had labeled me as a Native American in the system. And so that's, for them, I didn't, there was no difference between me and a Native American person. And it's complicated, when you look at race and data and how police folks can gather our race, it's pretty complicated. They don't really care. It's sad, but they don't really care. But I do think that disproportionality is important, and we have to acknowledge certain racial communities that are disproportionately incarcerated, right? You have to see the particulars that are happening, and why Black girls and why Pacific Islander youth are charged with, as adults, right? When they come across these criminal justice systems, there are very unique communities that are disproportionately impacted by this system that is really based on this pecking order, this racial hierarchy that was created by white folks in the 1800s that said Black people and indigenous people are on this end, and then they come to the middle, Asian folks, East Asian folks, and then white folks are on this end, right? And this pecking order that was created in the 18th century still impacts the way that we do policing and the way that we jail folks to this day.
Wow, this is a lot to impact. I want to go back to you. Thank you. To my question about, you certainly can. Go ahead.
Discussion. I try to make comments that have the most impact for our community. And when I first came into the police commission this morning, this afternoon, this evening, I was just on my way to the store, and I'm a community involvement person. Like I asked one individual in the audience, white guy, I said, "What brought you here?" He said, "George Floyd." And the whole conversation is not even my conversation of reparations or understanding people's pain, understanding the racial dynamics in the community, on the workplace, and not understanding the pain that slavery has for certain demographics. How can we ever be understood? And I was amazed when I asked majority of the police commission, "Do you guys know anything about the Million Man March?" I said, and the Million Man March, are you familiar with the Million Man March? Yeah, I did. She was, but there was other people that wasn't aware of it. And that is a Black descendant slave experience, because conflating the issues, and making people feel invisible and using slogans like George Floyd, but not allowing them to have a voice. Like even when you talk about contract and funding, when it comes to contracts and funding, it's different. You know, we're not part of the Native American population. You know, our experience is distinctly different as descendants of slaves. We're not part of the immigrant population, but people get judged by their race because you're from Nigeria. You probably got judged because you look like a descendant of slave. You probably got pulled over because you got it. And I respect that, and I hope that we have more discussion about that. And I don't know what's your position on reparations, you know, because a lot of reparations forums has to start with demographics to get research to understand how people are impacted. So what are some of your things when it comes to like reparations from demographic, like taking research, taking data for that?
I'm going to try not to, thank you for that. I'm going to try not to go too far down that rabbit hole because I guarantee you black people are not one monolithic thing.
Exactly.
It's just not. We're not one monolithic thing. And so I'm going to say this now, again, in the defense of the police department at all, but if we're saying that we want police to be able to respond, but police don't have the historical knowledge to be able to respond based off of the trauma that people have, whether that is being an immigrant or whether that's living through 400 years of systemic oppression. It's a lot to ask. Anyway, my question was about trust. And maybe, and I'd like to ask each of you, beyond how do we get the police department to have the community trust them, for people who are most impacted by policing, black, brown, marginalized, poor, homeless, unsheltered, what can be done? And this is a question for y'all too. I'm just trying to find some way out of this one. What can be done to build trust among these communities that the Seattle Police Department, and we know this is a lot to unpack, but is there anything that you can say that, and I'd like to hear from everybody on this panel, about what can be done to build trust by the police department,
I've always thought there should be more of a connection to the community, and I know we kind of touched on this earlier. The concept of I've never met a police officer and like had a conversation with one. Never ever. Like,
how old are you? You don't mind me asking?
I'm 38. I've never had a wanted interaction with a police officer. If I had ever talked to a cop, it's because the cop has been called on me. And so or if they pulled me over or stopped me walking, or, you know.
You ever had a police officer come to your school, in grade school or high school?
I don't think so. No, not where I went to school. I went to school in Tacoma, so they didn't come talk to us very often. And this is one of these things where, like, even when I walk past, sometimes I work in Capitol Hill, there, it's pretty safe, and I try to go on the other side of the street, avoiding the door calls, because it feels as if there's this bubble around it, as if it's like, I can't get too close to this. I can't get too close to this, so to get uncomfortable. And I've always felt like, again, and I guess I just kind of go back to that same concept of you know, them connecting with the community around them, as you were talking about, was it cooking? Is it cooking? Okay. Cooking, all right. Yeah, so like, I've never had that. I've never really seen that in the communities that I've grown up in. You know, I've been in Seattle for 10 years. I've been in Tacoma 20 years before that. And, you know, it was never as if it was like the cops would come to us. It's like, there were different feelings. There's like a community engagement. Like, you know, it would be more, again, if I'm interacting with a cop, it's like, I gotta get out of the situation as quickly as possible. It's never been like a positive connection that I've made with a police officer. And so that would be my point.
So what would you like to, if you could say, this is what y'all need to do
to create trust among these communities, black, brown, marginalized? What would you say needs to be done?
I see stuff like this. I would say having an opportunity to sit down with and it's not to say that things like this happen, taking place within the city and that they have sort of kind of attempted, but there feels like there's less of a like, meet us where we're at sort of thing, at school, at community things, right? If you want to connect with the black community, maybe you go to the African American Museum. Maybe you go there and you have conversations with where black people are at. You know, some coffee shop in Shoreline is not the place where I'm going to come have a conversation with you. You got to come to where the community is in order to connect. And so that's kind of my thought process.
Go ahead. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this. I mean, again, the same thing. You are not one monolithic people.
Yeah. Trust. So there's trust. We talked about trust also, like Ken had mentioned, with individual officers, right, that come to communities. But we know that the police department is part of a system, right? And a system that is institutionally homophobic, institutionally racist, right? Historically, that is the DNA of this police system that we've inherited. And that system starts behaving.
I'm just going to ask you to qualify that.
Yeah.
For people who may say, well, that's just your opinion.
Yeah.
That's what you think. So, how do you verify that something is institutionally homophobic, institutionally racist? Why do you say that?
So I would recommend for folks to take Undoing Institutional Racism training. It's a 2-day training by the People's Institute, and you get to understand the history of policing that started in this country since the 16th century, and why it was created, what it was for, and the ways that it still manifests till today. But I did want to make a point that if this institution starts to behave less like it's made for, right? So if this white supremacist institution starts to behave more like a community institution, right? Then it would start to behave differently. Like the Seattle Police Department and the unions, the police unions, might actually come to EC, the Community Police Commission, and say, hey, we want you to feel approval when we are developing these policing policies that are going to impact the communities that you represent, right? We want people that are going to be most impacted developing these laws, these policies, these practices, and before we even go to the lawmakers, right? That's when you start to behave differently. You behave out of humanistic practices as opposed to the old ways, right? The old ways, it's very much closed doors. Everybody in there is a white man. If you're not, there's maybe something wrong with you. But there are decisions that are made in all of these closed doors, and those closed doors have not been opened. And this is why the Seattle Police Department continues to disregard the Community Police Commission and doesn't come to the Police Commission to co-design a lot of these policies, because it's still inherently in its nature not community trend. It's not accountable to community. It's not accountable to those impacted communities. And until it starts to behave differently as an institution, then I think we'll start to see better results, right? From these things.
Trust issue. What can the Seattle Police Department do to increase trust of the community?
Yeah, it made me sad. Policing. Thank you, Tony. It made me sad to hear that my brother had not had that. I will introduce you to it. He's actually good friends with the commission. I've had near-death experiences with the police just because of 6'3" gun laws. That's it. And I'm not. And then I've had very amazing interaction with the police as well. Detective Cookie and a whole bunch of others that lead me, and that's why I was excited to join the commission, because of my own lived experience of being gunned down because I fit the description, and then also seeing a side where it can work well with the police and community, badge program. So before the badge program is an opportunity for SPD to have these young folks who've not been corrupted yet. I'm serious, that's just how to say it. And so these young folks will be talked about, these strong black women who've been in the force for 20, 25, they didn't even look their ages, for 20, 25 years in the force, telling them some of the things that help them go to the community, talk like do this, do that, check in, and not just word of mouth, but actual action. It goes to the system things. And they were warned. Even we're sharing this with you, but once you go in, a year in, 2 years in, you're with a cop who's been there for 15, 20 years, and you just start to slip into the old ways. Please remember the community. Remember what you did an oath to. Because you can have specific filter through cops that are doing an amazing job, but if you don't get to the root of the cause, the system, that is a systemic issue. So what I would say to build trust is how could we get community, how could we get CPC, how could we get SPD together? Because I told someone in the crowd earlier, the community is not going anywhere. And whether you guys like it or not, abolitionists or not, we might be all in the same line. The police is also not going anywhere, you guys. So, if that's the cards we're dealt, how could we bridge something to make sure that they're serving and protecting the community systemically and going deep down? So, yeah.
Executive Director of Community Police Commission, is this even a relevant question? Should we expect to trust the police department? Is that what they're there for? Are they there to answer the call? I mean, how do we, should we trust? I'll just ask a question. Okay? Is there something that the police can do to increase the trust of community members who are most impacted?
Well, I mean, the issue of should you trust the police is a question that everybody has to answer for themselves. You know, if I'm a white cisgender man on Queen Anne, I'm probably going to say, yeah, absolutely, we should trust the police, right? And so it really comes down to your experiences and how well you feel that they're serving you. What does the community, or what does the police need to do to earn the trust of communities? And I think it just goes back to what all my panelists have said. I mean, the great thing about going last when you answer a question is everybody takes all the best answers, and so all I have to do is say, ditto. And I think that this is exactly what needs to happen in order to build trust. I know we're very short on time, and I know that there's a community member that's waiting, so I want to.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we can get one last question on it.
We're over.
Two. Looks like there's two.
Come on.
Thank you again. I'm happy to follow up on you. Right? So there is one more important thing that we are forgetting, and I know this is about this community commissions that we are doing this, right? So I want to ask you this question: how our community is very important in this, right? So deeply concerns about the Uber, Lyft, taxi drivers, undocumented drivers, right? And they are reported, detained, deported by ICE. This is very important. It's our community. And it concerns us all. And your department, or let's say as a community, right, simply looks into how this happened, investigate on more, or put more concerns on it.
This is an extremely important issue, and we are actually working on it. We are working on immigration issues, both as they relate to the surveillance conversation that I was talking about earlier, and also general. We were disappointed to hear recently that there has been information shared by the Seattle Police Department with ICE It was apparently inadvertent. You can find this information yourself. It was apparently an inadvertent share, but ICE literally identified themselves as ICE, asked for information from the Seattle Police Department, specifically for use in removal proceedings, and that information was provided. And so in a city where we have a police department that says we do not assist the federal government in their immigration activities, we already know that we either have gaps in systems or we are setting up things that make it even easier for that information to get into the wrong hands. The expansion of the surveillance technology pilot is a really good example of that. If there was ever a time that was a good idea, it was not now. When you see anybody who wanted to see more cameras, anybody who ever thought that was a way to solve crime, this is not the time when you're literally watching the National Guard come in and take over local law enforcement agencies. Right. We have literally built a real-time crime center and said, here's some shiny new seats, welcome, please sit down and avail yourselves. And even beyond that, we know that companies like Ring have opened up their ability for private citizens to register their home doorbell cameras with the Seattle Police Department. Yeah, that gasp. You're like that person in the infomercial that's like, well, wait, there's more. No, but like that's a thing, you know. Private businesses have been asked to register, so the cameras that are already available to private businesses have been asked to register with the Seattle Police Department. So we see our city moving in ways that seem like they are conducive to making it easier for the federal government to conduct these type of activities. So we're staunchly against that. We'll continue to stand that way on behalf of communities. And so it goes. And, we would hate to see the first incident of surveillance camera misuse, but we will be right there waving around all of our receipts for the big I told you so parade that happens up and down Fifth Avenue when that day comes. And so I think that we need to be very mindful. And again, I cannot stress this enough. We need to watch who we are putting into the decision-making seats in Seattle. A lot about the federal election, right? We're always watching the federal elections, right? But the folks that are in local government have the biggest ability to impact our daily lives. We need to watch who we're putting in those seats. We need to remember the decisions that they make and how they vote. And then we need to use our voice and turn out.
Thank you. My name is Donna Stringer. I'm also a Columbia City resident. And I've been watching the CPC for about 5 years now. I don't have a question. I have 2 requests around accountability. The first one is that given that we all know that ICE and the orange thread is in our back door, I hope that CPC will take some time and energy to establish a policy of accountability for what happens if our police department does not protect us and our citizenry. I think there's too much information we know that we have right now in our police department. We also know that we have very fine police officers, and we need to hold the police department accountable for weeding out those people that will not protect us when ICE comes in the back door. Or the second request is around a policy of accountability for our police chief. We have a new police chief who is hired without any public input, and who has publicly said that he will spend whatever money he wants to spend, regardless of his budget. And has also said that he is going to hire more women police officers. He has, in fact, outspent his budget, and he has not hired more women police officers. So please have a policy of how we hold our police chief accountable to the citizens of this city.
Thank
by 2030. They were asked recently during the budget discussions. City budget is in development right now, and you all have a voice in that. There's a public comment opportunity there. But they were asked recently in public comment, by a council member about the investment in 3030, a position that was funded in the police department to advance that initiative, and whether or not it had been filled. And the answer was no. And so you're right, the progress on that has been lacking. That's been one of the policy items that we had been tracking since then, and have not seen any significant progress on that. And on top of that, we have questions about beyond the initiative to hire more women. Where are the other goals in terms of diversifying the department? What are we doing in terms of race and ethnicity? Officers that are multilingual and can serve the community in different ways. Crisis certifications. I've asked the chief publicly on multiple occasions about hiring more police officers that are specialized and can join the crisis response team, which is in high demand by community members. They have mental health practitioners that work alongside police officers on patrol calls. So these are all issues that are incredibly important. I thank you for your feedback. I thank you for your continued support of CPC, and we will absolutely move on both of those. Thank you.
Can you write policy and create policy as the Community Police Commission?
We can write policy recommendations. We also heavily advocate on ordinances that are put in front of the City Council. So one example is the city's crowd management ordinance, which deals with how the SPD responds to crowds, protests, those types of significant activities. CPC influenced a number of amendments. We proposed a number of amendments, met with most of the City Council members on those. Every amendment that was passed on that law was heavily influenced by the CPC. And in the council hearing in which crowd management was passed, CPC got 33 shout-outs from the City Council hearing that. So yes, we make policy recommendations, but we also engage directly and actively change the law in policing in Seattle.
I want to give everybody, we went a little overtime, that's why I went a little late. Definitely want to give everybody an opportunity for final words based on just whatever it is that you got here, but I was just about to say, this is about you.
Does anybody want to hear a story of my son and the police at school?
Yeah.
So if you have ever seen the board meeting last month, the Seattle Public School board meeting last month, I gave a 2-minute speech, and that affected the vote. So I'm going to give a shorter version or a longer version of that. But basically, my son attended Garfield High School, and and he saw a hazing incident, and then he tried to report it. And there was an SRO there, and when you had, as a parent, when you had a phone call from the school, from the police, and well, we have your son here, what do you think? You think that your son, we're going to give your son an award, this is really great. Or you think that your son is in trouble? Yeah, so what these words are going to haunt me forever. We want you to tell your son to stop talking to the press. You know you're the son, you're going to talk to the newspaper, we want you to tell him to stop. The media will blow this all up. Yes, so that's what it said. But then the vice principal and the police told me. So and he's interfering with an active investigation. There was no investigation. I have done public record research for 5 years. I couldn't find a single investigation on hazing at Garfield. Not ever. Not a single one in history. Even though Garfield is known for hazing. So if you Google Garfield hazing, there's an op-ed in the paper, in The Stranger, that will tell the whole story. And then there's the Seattle Times that have the story too. But I'm going to give a quick speech on this. So, why was an SRO concerned about students talking to the press? Because the Seattle Public Schools were concerned, and since the district paid the SRO salary, the SRO could be used to enforce school discipline matters, and they can function as the enforcer, helping students to align their values with the district agenda if and when conflict arises. So my question is this: why is the police listening to the district? Even though the district paid their salary, why don't they have their own morals? So why do they say, okay, the police tell me that I need to be, I need to tell this kid to stop talking to the press. The uniform that you wear, that the police wear, is very powerful. So why you listen? Do the police know how powerful it is that it represents the law? I check my speed limit when I drive by, and so when I see police drive by. So when does that police officer know it was against the law to tell the people to stop talking to the press? And if they did that, they did not, so what? So who would I complain? Where were you 5 years ago? Where was the commission 5 years ago? I didn't even know anything about the commission. Who would I have complained to? Like, if I complained to the school district, oh, this belongs to the police. If I complained to the police department, oh, he worked for the school district. It doesn't belong to us. Where were you? Where's the accountability there? And then the story gets worse. So they did not contact us for half an hour. My son was there with the vice principal and the SRO for half an hour before they contacted us. I don't know what they did in there, but imagine being with the police officer for over half an hour before your parents were contacted. And then for another hour before his dad got there. That is pretty scary. Why didn't the police officer realize that? And then my son had a breakdown, a meltdown. And the police officer stood there on guard. There was only one exit. So, what if he was to walk out and leave the room? What would they do? Oh, if he accidentally hit the police officer, that would be considered assault, right? So, where was the humanity in that? Did the police officer realize that when you work with kids, their presence is very powerful as a deterrent to crime, right? So, where was that? And then you have to sign an agreement, a disciplinary contract, we call it a safety plan, to say that he was following all orders not to talk to the press or face exposure. And this was okay. And then what is worse is that, the district, the rest of the district, is just, they say, everything is okay to do that. The vice principal had a lot of leeway. This came from the principal in the paper this other time. The principal had a lot of leeway with the police, that they could do anything with the police there, discipline or whatever. So why is the police allowing, why is there any policy against the school admins using the police to discipline or to silence the students? Why isn't there any policy on that? Is it the police functioning as a different identity, or they should hire as a highwayman? So do we want to write some policy to prohibit the police from doing something illegal, like suppressing students, even if they are contracted out to work for school districts? So if you have watched the Garfield police back at school, the district yanked out the MOU, the part about not using the police officers for discipline. They took that out. So that means that they want to use discipline. If they want to use the police for discipline, is that the police job? Do you want the police to be used for disciplining the students? We don't have any bad experience with the police. I still believe that the police is there to serve and to protect. And to me, the police is a very powerful weapon, and a weapon can be used for two things. A weapon can be used to protect or to do harm. And when you put that weapon in the hands of the school district, and they don't have the best interest of the students in mind, they have the interest of protecting the school district, of protecting the district from bad press. So if the police is implicit in restricting First Amendment rights, then where's the accountability in that? Or I say, what's the school district's fault? It's not our fault. So should you write a policy to restrict that? Like, you should not be, when you contract out to a school district, like any other organization, you should not be performing illegal things like restricting, suppressing information, doing things illegal.
anybody else out here before we wrap this up that has any final comments? All right, going once, going twice, last opportunity for final comments. Okay. Wow.
I have a quick one for Amanda, and I just want to thank you for sharing your story just now. That was impactful. I really wish that CPC could take credit for getting out there and issuing a policy that keeps police officers from keeping students from talking to the media, but that policy was written quite some time ago, and it's called the U.S. Constitution. There's sometimes that I hear stories like that, and I think, man, I'm in the wrong line of work as an attorney. Because to think about what happened in that engagement with your son raises so many issues, from how police use interrogation tactics on adolescents to the suppression of his ability to speak to the media. There is absolutely nothing that would give the right to the police to say you cannot talk to anybody about anything, and that includes an investigation we have going on or don't have going on. So I thank you for sharing that. The relationship between Seattle Public Schools and Seattle Police Department in, student resource officers or student engagement officers at high schools is governed by an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, a legal document between those two parties. Recently, when the conversations came up around this, there was a lot of different community forums that were raised in communities, and they passed around the draft MOU and said, what do you think about this community? So there is absolutely opportunities to get involved and govern the way that that relationship works if SEOs are brought back. I think the school board was wise to put a pause, to outright decline to bring that back at this time, because I do not think there had been sufficient community engagement to be able to look at issues like this and think about if it is something that we want to do, how do we safeguard against some of the harms that students can face.
They took the MAU out. The book, and they demanded the draft that was not what was really agreed on.
Yeah, so McMahon is sharing that they took out the MOU and presented a draft that was not what community agreed on, and that's true. The whole draft was developed by SPS as a way to propose this policy, and community did not have a chance to weigh in extensively. So it was a right decision to not move forward with it. We know that the school board is also changing as a result of elections, so we do need to watch this issue closely because it's not clear what the new school board members, which way they will lean on this issue, and so this is one that we're going to continue to be engaged in. We did attend the public meeting at Garfield as well as some of the school board meetings, and we'll continue to do that, and I hope we see you there.
Police accountability. I want to start with you. Final words. What you've heard today, what your thoughts are about what you've heard, or whatever you want to say.
I think first of all, thank everybody for coming out tonight. I mean, this is the commitment of your time, and you could be doing anything, and you're here, with us engaging in these really important conversations. This is my first time being a part of the town hall. Again, I'm pretty new to the CPC, and I really am embracing this opportunity because I think, yet again, there's been a lot of my life where I never understood the police as a resource, more as a threat. And so I'm hoping that with time and spending with all of these incredibly smart people up here, that I can help to take what I learned here, give back to the community, and hopefully with time and effort, we can figure out a way to, bridge that gap, which is a term that keeps popping in my head, but I really do feel as if what we do here is important, and y'all showing up is what makes this work. And so I just wanted to say thank you for coming out tonight, because it really means a lot.
What do you call it? The start of the CPC was because there was essentially state-sanctioned violence right against an indigenous person. And we know in this country that state-sanctioned violence is still something that is legal. But we know that in many other countries and communities, there are community-rooted, community-based restorative policing that our country has, right? And so I just think that sometimes we get lost in the sauce, right, in this country, and we think that this is the only solution because we haven't dreamed of new realities where communities actually at the center of determining the health and wellness of their people. And if there are people in their communities that are sick, that are committing heinous crimes, they also know the prescriptions as to how to build a network around them to rehabilitate them to wholeness, right? And so there's many options around the world, and I think I'm really proud to be a part of this team because this team is very creative and is thoughtful about all of the ways that we can bring in great ideas, right? And offer solutions. I don't believe that solution is increasing the police budget. I will never believe in that. I think will never believe in that. I think that there are healing justice, restorative justice work that needs to be supported and funded, and communities of color, most impacted communities, are ready to do that work.
First of all, I'd like to shout out our amazing sign language We said a lot, and you saw some of us were getting excited and talking fast, and they kept up with the whole thing. So thank you so much. And also to the staff, the question that you asked earlier was like, where has CPC been? The reason why you see visibility, I don't know if I say this all the time. I've said this, I think Tony B's going to get tired of me because we did some radio interviews. You see a hotel, you see a new restaurant, and you see new management. We have new management in town. We have new staff in town. That's why you are hearing CPC. That's why you're seeing CPC. That's why we want community voice. I'm not saying that it wasn't there before. You read up on CPC and you'll see the history and you see the past, present. Now we have the current. The team is really intentional about uplifting community voice. With community voice is going to come accountability both to us and then also to the SPD. That's what we need. Hold us accountable as we hold the SPD accountable, because we can enter doors that unfortunately you guys cannot, but you should. So, but we will be able to, as we continue moving, we'll be able to open up those doors for you guys to enter, so that we're not your priest in a booth where you're confessing to us. You go directly to the person. So hold us accountable as we hold SPD accountable. Thank you guys so much for doing that.
Executive Director of the Community Police Commission. That's more to say, but I want to give you the opportunity for final words that you would like to share.
Okay, I'm going to share the mic in just a moment with my illustrious colleague and the co-chair of the Community Police Commission. So let me be quick. You stole some of my plug, but I'm so happy that you did. I want to give a huge shout out to the staff team at the CPC. For real, because everything that was done, this was an incredible amount of work. It's not just tonight, it's 3 radio broadcasts, a ton of work, social media, so much stuff. These teams call themselves the Mighty Micros, and they are small but powerful, few in number but mighty in impact. And I'm so grateful for the team. I'm grateful to our commissioners that have joined us. Being president of community is exactly why you're here on this commission, and exactly how you serve. You know, you think about the city council, the comments I was making earlier, you put people in decision-making seats. Do they or do they serve you? These folks appointed by the city council absolutely do. You see them in community and you see them serving community. Every first Wednesday from 9 to 11 in City Hall, we have our public meetings. They're open to the public. Anybody can come. We also have refreshments, so check it out. And they're also recorded, so if you can't make it in person, you can watch it online. We also have technology that can make it available in the language of your choice. And so this is something that we really want to engage community members in, so please visit us at those meetings. Touch base with any of our staff or any of the commissioners you see here. Most of us have this type of logo on us. If we don't, it'll just be obvious that they're with us. But engage. We've got business cards. We'd love to connect with you. If you have feedback for us, if you have questions for us, if there's an issue that we can help you look into or support, email us at ocpc@cpc.org. ocpc@seattle.gov, ocpc@seattle.gov. You can also find us on all social media platforms. And so, yeah, please do engage with us. This is what we're here for. We're here for you. We're here for the community. Our phone number didn't work. Thank you for that feedback. Email does not bounce.
It did bounce.
ocpc@seattle.gov. Try it right now and tell me if it bounces before I leave this place. Thank you. Carly's here.
So I just want to make this last comment. The commission does not separate between the different communities, and we won't bring it out there. We have, can you tell where I'm from? What African country I'm from?
I'm going to say Georgia.
What African country am I from? The police doesn't know either. So that's why we'll never differentiate.
So I'm going to ask, of course, we know that you have the right to not applaud, but I'm going to ask you to applaud our panel. Did you enjoy this conversation? And maybe just the tip of the iceberg, but it's the start of a conversation. And this wasn't just a town hall. The point of this was to kind of hold a mirror up to our community, to come together, and we talked about tough things, and we listened. I know I did, and folks were heard. Because police accountability is about policies and procedures, but it's about people. It's about people. It's about lives. It's about families. It's the right to feel safe and respected wherever you live. At Rainier Avenue Radio, we believe that progress begins with dialogue. That's what we do. That's how we get down. That's why we have over 90 members of our community who host shows on our radio station, and they get to say whatever they want to say. And if they don't feel like they have the experience, we give them the microphone and we say, just share your experience. That's what we do here at Rainier Avenue Radio. If anyone out there has an idea for a show that you want, you can have a show on Rainier Avenue Radio. We don't charge. As a matter of fact, we'll provide you with a producer, we'll provide you with an engineer. That's why we're here. Now, you may be wondering, well, yes, at Rainier Avenue Radio, we do hyper-focus on South Seattle and our diverse community here in South Seattle. So other communities may be different. But it's important that we share the voice of this community on Rainier Avenue Radio. That's what we do. I want to extend my appreciation to our panelists for their insights. Really appreciate y'all and elevating this dialogue and advancing solutions that build a stronger, safer, and more just King County for all. I'm Tony Reese, and on behalf of Rainier Avenue Radio, thank you for being part of this important conversation. We will be doing this again. That's it. That's all the time we have. That's going to do it for the kids. In closing, I'd just like to say, whether you believe you can, or whether you believe you cannot, you're probably right.